My guest is joining me right now, Dr. Afolabi Olowookere, who is the Chief Economist at Analyst Data Services and Resources. Dr. Olowookere, good morning to you.
Nancy, good morning, and good morning to our viewers. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. A happy new year to you.
Happy New Year.
Okay, Doctor, let's get started. Is Doctor there? Can I see him, please, Director? Um, Doctor, okay, fantastic. I mentioned earlier before you came on board that budgets, we should be interested in the budget, as it were. And budget seems to be like an encyclopedia of government. But I think I would start by asking you, why do you think that many Nigerians are not so interested in the budget? 28.7 trillion naira this year, assigned by Mr. President. Why are we not so interested in the budget?
Okay. Once again, thank you for having me. Maybe I will approach the issue from two sides. This is a developing economy, and one of the characteristics of a developing economy is that you have what is called dualism. Uh, Dualism in the sense that you may have people who are very aware at one extreme and people who are less aware at the other extreme. What that means is that you may have a very huge informal sector coexisting with the formal sector. So how does that explain the question? Why are people not interested? There are people that are interested and there are people that may not be interested, maybe because they are not aware or they just see government as someone who just must do some things without necessarily looking at what he's doing. But there are a lot of businesses, international organizations, enlightened individuals that are also interested in the Nigerian. So there are two extremes. There are people that are interested, there are people that are not interested. And we must be interested because if government is for us all, if government is supposed to improve the welfare of the citizens and also defend the country, then citizens should be interested in the budget. They should have their inputs, especially at the preparation stage, and they must also feel the impact of the budget. But there's something that I can say is good news. As we move on, especially in this democracy, I think more people are now getting interested in budget, in the budgeting process, especially on the size of the budget, how government is going to finance the budget, as well as the revenue that government is looking for.
I guess that perhaps people that are interested in the budget are people like you and I, and people that are perhaps a bit social media savvy, and people that read your reports when they come out and, are interested in the breakdown from people like you, and even on this show, the analysis. So I can imagine how many people, what's the ratio of those people that are interested in the budget. And what's coming to my mind really is that I think the onus should be on us that are interested in the budget and the impact the budget makes for every citizen, to be able to pass that knowledge to the rest of us and be able to say, guys, this is really essential because it trickles down. The other question is, why are we always caught in the middle of talking about new budgets and not following past budgets implementation, Doctor? Because whenever the why did you laugh? Whenever the budget was to be presented, we are all interested. But after that now, of course, budget office will just perhaps go to sleep.
Federation.
Yes, the next time we'll be seeing Dr. Ben Akabueze is when they are trying to prepare the budget, or when we see him at events and we ask those questions. Do you understand what I'm saying? It just goes like that. The next one now is that perhaps we'll be expecting President Tinubu to present 2025 budget in like October or November. We will not be interested in what has happened in 2024, or even the implementation ratios for President Buhari, which was really not so fantastic.
Okay, so let me start by saying that, it's human nature. Everybody likes new things. You like new cars, you like new babies. Once we have the new ones, the older ones they receive less attention. But in all fairness to the government also, especially following the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007 up to date, they've been doing a lot in trying to tell us how the budget has been implemented. And I think you raised one very important issue. Who are the people that should be interested in budget? All of us should be interested. People like you, especially, who are informing and shaping opinion across the country and across the world, should also let people know about budget. And I think you are doing a lot in that. Look at what, I'll give you one example. I was discussing with a colleague in recent time. World Bank has done a lot with SIFTAs and
Yeah,
later with SEBA,
exactly.
trying to
Yeah.
encourage budget and trying transparency at the level of subnational. And I was discussing and I said, how many of us are actually going to the website of these states, downloading these documents and analyzing them? Most of us are interested at the federal level. If at all we are picking a state, it will probably be Lagos or maybe one or two other states. So we need CSOs, we need press, we need people to be more informed about the budget. But because if we are not informed about it, politicians, especially our kind of politicians, sometimes are also they also be very happy that people are not really answering questions. So coming to the issue of implementation,
Yeah.
implementation of our budget has not always been very perfect. When it comes to recurrent, we do a lot. We try to do almost 97% in terms of recurrent. Even sometimes we do 101%. When it comes to capital, sometimes we do 30%, 40%. We hardly do 50%, especially at the federal level. But the data are there. The information are there. But more often than not, as you said rightly, many of us are interested in the new one. In the euphoria of the new one, we kind of forget the past one. But I think the knowledge that we are not dissecting the past budget enough, that knowledge is good enough for us to start looking at this budget and say, wait a minute, this is what you said you would do the last time. What percentage of it have you implemented? But don't forget also, by the time they are presenting a new year's budget, we are yet to see the complete budget of the previous year. So for now, when the president was probably within the budget, he will probably be talking about October, as at October, as at November. And also don't forget, some of the capital expenditure can roll over to March or May of the new year, of the next year. So by the time the figures come out, I think everybody is lost in the fire of the new one without looking at the past one. But we need to start looking at this,
Now,
digging into them.
Doctor, so sorry to cut you short. Just a follow-up to this. Do you think that the National Assembly right now, especially this is a new administration and this is its first wholesome budget. So do you think that the National Assembly moving forward should be able to go further to ask the presidency questions and even, yes, the federal government questions on the implementation of the last budget line by line, so that we don't get to see, because even in the past few years, it's been there as far as I can remember. You will see buying of computers, so amounts. It will keep on recurring. They don't buy them, but still they're there. And nobody's bringing out those things. So should we really put pressure on the National Assembly to change the style of perhaps a bit of oversight now in terms of the past budgets? Do you understand what I'm saying? Apart from people like us that are the media that would put pressure on these people, but it's also left for the National Assembly to ask questions and say, wait, guys, before we go on with this, what's the implementation of this? They had the privilege of looking at 2024 budget, for example. When they want to do 2025, they say, okay, let's look at it again.
Okay, so there are a lot of work is there. And,
I know.
We can ask them to do more. Definitely, they need to do more. But let's look at it this way. The National Assembly has a lot of work to do, really. When you look at the typical budget of a year, detailed budget at the federal level, it can be about 1,500, between 1,300 and 1,800 page documents. And these are still not the entire thing, but these are just summary line item of what they want to spend in money. So the National Assembly needs to do more, as you rightly said, and we need to also increase our sincerity. But don't forget, budget is not just an economic document, it's a political document. And people in the National Assembly are also looking at what is in it. Of course, some of them have said that by the time they go back to their constituency, they need to show them that they have bought something because the kind of democracy we play and the kind of culture that we have. Yeah, I'm not trying to defend them, but we can always improve. But we also have the work of the Auditor General. So it's not only the National Assembly, because if somebody says, I've spent money and he has not actually bought the computer, it will be, yeah, National Assembly can do some oversight, but will they do the work of the auditor? And to what extent have we empowered that office to be able to audit effectively what the government has done?
We have we have an auditor general, and we have an audit office. Yes.
We have an audit office. So to what extent? So if everybody does his or her own job, then it won't just be on the desk of the National Assembly alone. Because once you push a lot of things to the National Assembly also, then they start asking questions and people start saying, oh, they are interested, they are politicians, they are not professionals. So there are aspects of the budget that are supposed to be handled by professionals. Legislation and the rest, yeah, they can do some oversight. Oversight is not to ask questions line by line. I mean, let me tell you something about the computer that you mentioned. And in all fairness to some of the government's ministry department and agencies, they will put that they want to buy 5 computers, but they probably actually need 20 computers, but their budget cannot carry. So sometimes they put them 5, 5, 5 every year.
I just use that as an example. I just use that as an example because I've seen also in recent budgets that, for example, an agricultural agency, nothing concerned them with building road, and it's there that is building road. Exactly, you know. But anyway, Doctor, I want us to look at it because this show today is going to be interactive. We're also going to be getting calls from Nigerians to air their views. But I would like you, before we start taking calls, to speak about this year's budget and what it entails for each person. You've done a fantastic job in terms of breaking it down. And kudos to you. You're doing a wonderful job. I must publicly acknowledge you. And for those of you that are watching, go and get this book. Let me give you free adverts because of the good work you've been doing. Go and get the book of Dr. Afolabi Olowookere, Nigeria in Figures. That is, any figure you want, go and get the book. For those that come to my office and say, Nancy, I need these statistics, I'm charging you for it now, and I will direct you to Dr. Olowookere, Nigeria in Figures. So go get that book. You're doing a fantastic job, Doctor, so well done. So speak to us about this 2024 budget and what it means for the citizens of Nigerians. How much am I getting as a Nigerian? And if we divide it daily, how much? I don't even want to go there, but I've read your report. Just say it.
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy. That's very interesting. And thanks for the free advert. Thanks, always. So if you look at Nigerian budgets, often we just say federal government budget. We should not forget that apart from the federal government, we also have states. We may have local government, but some of them are like under the states. So we can say federal, effectively, the federal government as well as the state government. So if we look at what the federal government is trying to do, federal government is budgeting about 28.78 trillion for 2024. And that was actually 27.5 because the National Assembly added 1.2 trillion. That generated a lot of debate in the country on whether that is the National Assembly and what is it that they want to spend the money on specifically. But if you look at the states, all the states put together, they are budgeting about 16.14 trillion for 2024. So by the time you had the state budget and the federal budget, you are going to have about 45 trillion being budgeted for 2024. And that is a lot. That is going to be about 15% of Nigerian GDP. Nigerian GDP by 2024, at the end of 2024, will probably be about 300 trillion naira. So if you try to say if by federal government budget, which is, as we mentioned, 28.78, if you try to divide that by the number of citizens in the country, that is the population of the country, and that is assuming that they share the budget across everybody, which is not always going to be. Nobody's going to share the budget for everybody and give them their own shares. But let's assume that something happened, they then say, government, how much are you actually budgeting per citizen at the federal level? It then implies that the federal government is budgeting about 126,200 per head in a year. 126,200 per head in a year. And that would be equivalent to 344 naira, 90 kobo. So about 345 naira per day. So
for each
if
Nigerian,
we want to share
300,
for each Nigerian, 345 naira
345
per day.
naira. So that is what it means
Per
to
day.
everybody. Oh. I hope they are listening.
That's what. And if they also say, okay, let's even add that to that of our states. So collect from federal and collect from state. It will be about 540 naira per day. So nationally, for federal and for states, if you combine them, an average Nigeria will get about 540 naira a day. The question is that enough? Can we see whether there are countries that have done far more than that? We may not have to look at Europe or some advanced countries. Do we have African countries that have done similar things, or what are we having around Africa? So we try to do one simple analysis to compare Nigeria, 2023 for instance, 2023 budget for Nigeria. For that one, we already have the actual. With some other countries in Africa, the countries we compare are Botswana, South Africa, Angola, Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. What we find out is that Nigeria will be budgeting about $256. That is at our 2023, because by the time you look at 2024, that is far less than that because of our exchange rate. Exchange rate is a major problem, and I hope the country will do something about it. The less our currency is worth, the smaller the size of a government becomes. So Nigeria was budgeting about $256 per citizen in a year. But a country like Botswana budgeted $2,508. So that is about 10 times Nigeria. So when you look at the Botswana in terms of budget per citizen, it is 10 times Nigeria. South Africa, 2,052, which is about 8 times the size of Nigeria. Angola is a smaller country, but also oil producing, and also has some kind of structure apart from the fact that it's smaller than us in size and GDP. If you divide their budget by the total number of citizens, it will be about $615. That is about 2.5 times more than Nigeria. Kenya, 486, Ghana, 473, Rwanda, 286, Cameroon, 285, and Nigeria, 256. Don't forget, this is general government. When you combine federal and states together, in all these countries, Nigeria is just small compared to many other African countries that we may want to be like or even be better than. Definitely, nothing stops us from being better than Botswana, Angola, Kenya, and Ghana in terms of our budget per citizen. So, an average Nigeria is going to have something very small in a year. I mean, if you look at it per day, it's less than $1 per day. It's less than a quarter of a dollar per day. When you look at it. What does that tell us? It tells us that even though the size of our budget appears big, because we are many, the population is large, the GDP is large, not because we are productive, but because we are many. If all of us are producing one naira, and you've had it over almost 250 million by the end of this year, 238 million Nigerians by the end of this year, it will amount to a very big figure. But by the time you look at how much goes to an individual, it then becomes small. It implies that as a country, we need to increase productivity per person, we need to increase budget per person. And whatever we do in planning and budgeting, we need to take into consideration the size of our population.
So the size of our population for budgeting for citizens now seems to be a disadvantage. The more people you are, the less money you get. But but let's see. Let's bring in Nigerians. Like in fact, I've been getting indications that a lot of people are calling. So let's see if we can take our first call. Are we ready for a first caller now? And let's get started. But while we wait for the caller, Dr. Olowookere, how do you think that inflation will filter into wages or salaries this year? You've just broken it down that what an average Nigerian gets at least daily from this budget and yearly. What do you see as per the wage award that the president promised even the federal government workers? How do you see that filtering into inflation? And the inflation I mean now is food prices. Because if prices are going higher, the increase in salary does not really mean anything.
Thank you. Let me start from the budget side because sometimes analysis of the budget are done in nominal terms. Nominal terms will mean that the way they appear without necessarily looking at whether things have increased. A good example, somebody will say, oh, the federal government this year is budgeting 20.78 trillion, and that when you compare that with what was done in 2023, for instance, is about 16% higher. So federal government can come forward and say the budget I have for the citizen is 16% higher for 2023. And in economics, you know that when you increase size of budget, it should feed economic growth.
Yeah.
But economic growth is not in nominal terms, it is in real terms. What do I mean by real? Real in the sense that you have to remove the effect of inflation. So if federal government is saying, I'm increasing my budget by 16%, you ask the federal government, what is the expected inflation in 2024, rather. Expected inflation in 2024 can be between 20 and 23%, even though we are ending this year about 29%, but we are ending last year about 29%. We are going to see this year, let's assume the central bank is able to do a lot. I'll come back to the issue of wage rates because that can also make sure that you don't actually get something close to 20%. You have something 35% at the end of it. But let's assume they are able to moderate through a lot of our inflation.
Okay.
Get inflation
Okay, doctor, can I halt you a bit? We're getting a call from Mutuwa from Nasarawa State. Hello, Mutuwa, and good morning. Hello, are you there? Oh, okay. Okay, doctor, can you continue? And I hope that Mutuwa calls back. Okay, doctor, continue with your line of thought.
So when you look at that in terms of how the government is increasing it by 17% and expected inflation is about 23%, it then implies that in the real term, without inflation, I mean, if you incorporate inflation, government budget, federal government has actually fallen by about 7% in real terms. So the impact on the people will not be felt. It will be felt nominally, but in terms of real impact, people will not see the impact over what they saw last year. Now, coming to the question of wage rates, one of the things that governments most times try to do is when you raise prices of things like energy, like petrol, diesel, and the rest, especially things that goes into production process as well as consumption of people. They are going to demand less for it for many reasons, because the budget, the money they have will not be able to catch up. And two, they are going to seek alternative.
Okay, doctor. Sunday from Abuja is calling. Yes. Hello, Sunday.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead with...
I love this your topic today, why Nigerians are no longer interested in the national budget. Do you know how many of us put Nigerian budget to be? We see it as a very big cow, killed by federal government with mouth, while the public eat it with ears. The reason is simple. Look at what is going on at the national level. The Ministry of this humanitarian, what is going on, go to every other parastatals, ministries. You see that they don't have feeling for the common Nigerian. They only think about themselves.
Okay.
Even this cost, the reduction of the federal government spend they are talking about, they are just pinching it bit by bit. They know what to do.
Okay.
They know how to do the right thing.
Thank you, Sunday. I think your comments have been taken. Thank you for calling. Thank you. All right, doctor, you've heard it from one of our callers saying why they are not interested in the budget that we see. Is doctor still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Doctor, did you hear what the caller said?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so you can imagine, but I am begging you people this morning, let us, in the spirit of the new year, let us be interested. Because if we are not interested, the so-called politicians too would be happy that we are not interested. Because if we are interested, we'll ask questions and we actually, seek for the accountability and transparency. And they would also be under pressure to do the right thing. Okay, doctor, go ahead. Or do you want to comment on what Sunday has said? Or just go ahead
Yes,
with your...
I will finish. I'll finish my
Yes,
thought and I'll comment on what
yeah.
you said. So, if we increase prices, just like two prices have increased, fuel prices as well as exchange rates, it's also a price in an economy. And people don't have money, then the impact on inflation will be moderated. But by the time we now had increase in salary, then people have a lot of money, then it can also be inflationary. What am I trying to say? Uh, Unification or harmonization of the different rates, increase in fuel prices, they've contributed to our rising inflation rate. Inflation has been rising before those things were, but they actually contributed to it. Now we are in a very high position of inflation. It then implies that the purchasing power of an average Nigerian has been eroded over the years
Okay.
as salaries have not increased. Uh,
Doctor,
you recall?
yes, there's another caller. You know, today is not just only you, so just pardon us.
No, no, I know. I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Chima is calling from Lagos. Hello, Chima. Welcome to the program. What's your comment very quickly?
Good morning, Nancy,
Good morning.
and good morning, Dr. Olowookere. Some of us here are interested in the budget and would like to know how the budget performs because when you are planning the budget, there are certain things that you put in place, and you need to have a variance analysis to check whether the budget performed well or if it is an adverse budget. So can we know the performance of 2023 budget to see whether it was adverse in certain places and favorable in other places? And we know that this is not just a zero-based budget. This is like a rolling budget. So what are the rationale for rolling some budgets from 23 percentage? You are talking in terms of real terms and inflationary terms. So, but normally, when you are moving from 2023 to 2024, there may be some percentage increase, although which will be more than the inflation. So, what influenced those percentages? Can you speak about them, especially the performance of the 2023 budget, so that we will be looking at 2024, we'll be saying this is the proposed budget for 2024, this is the actual budget for 2024 when it's completed.
Okay.
Let us
Okay.
measure.
I think Sunday, your point has been noted. You want to know the implementation rates, how 2023 budget was executed, so that we can have something else to benchmark on at the end of 2024. Thank you very much, Sunday, for calling. All right, Doctor, over to you because we're getting a lot of calls. So let's get your let's get your comment.
Okay,
and if you want to comment on what Sunday has mentioned.
Yes, I'll comment on them. So
Yeah.
as I said, salaries need to be increased. There should be wage increase, but that also may have inflation. So the question is, how would the monetary authority be able to harmonize with the fiscal authorities to make sure that when we increase salary, we also increase productivity, so that we have things to buy domestically rather than we try to look for exchange rate again and buy cars and things like that. They have to pressure on foreign exchange. So that is something they have to start thinking about. I'm sure they are also aware about it. Somebody said the reason why Nigerians are not interested in the budget because it's like a big cow. Nigeria government will hit it with this. Politicians will hit it with their mouths, and Nigerians will only eat it with their ears. I think that's what he said. I think that's the opinion of many Nigerians. But what I would say is that government listening to this kind of feedback needs to do more. by sensitizing Nigerians about the impact of budget on their lives. And I think, as we know, if the bulk of the budget goes to debt service, about 10 trillion, if another big goes to a current expenditure, which is payment of salaries, and if just small part goes to capital expenditure, capital expenditure this time around is also touching about 10 trillion, which is huge. But we also need to start looking at what part of this capital expenditure is developmental. You raise a very important issue. A Ministry of Agriculture doing roads, a Ministry of Water Resources doing power, or somebody buying better chairs, nice car parks, and things like that. Definitely, for those that supply those things, they are going to make money. But for the entire economy, what is the impact of such allocation of resources on Nigerians? But government needs to answer more questions. But before people will start asking reasonable questions about the budget, government needs to start answering the ones that have been asked, and also sensitize other people that are not even aware about the budget impact on their lives, citizens' budget, making sure that they are aware, and then next year and year after, they start asking good questions, because it's a kind of a feedback. That way, government will know what they want and do for them what they want. And when you come back to such people and say, pay more taxes, they see the impact of government or what the government has done with the little resources they are giving to government without using to buy big cars or enjoying better offices. They too will be willing to contribute to the advancement or the progress of their own society. So I think I see that as more of an advice to government to make sure that people are not asking much questions. It's not a good thing. It's to make them to be aware so that they can ask good questions, so that positive feedback, government can improve, society can improve. That is the only way that we as a country can compete favorably with other countries of the world. So the second question on how has the last budget performed? And as I mentioned, government always, if you read the speech of the president, when he was presenting the budget, as well as the minister's presentation a few days after, there was an analysis of the budgets. And I will also say this, I'm advertising for the Budget Office of the Federation on our website. They have a budget implementation report that is always put there quarterly, every quarter. It may be delayed about 1 or 2 months after a quarter, which is understandable because some of it does have to be harmonized, and some of the data will come from Office of the Accountant General. So it's always there, and the variances are always calculated for each of the line. The revenue, expenditure, deficit, and the rest. So it's always there. It's for us to engage more, ask more questions, use those information to get informed and inform other people that may be around.
Okay. I hope that answers Sunday's question, but I wish I could ask more questions around that. But let's move over to Al Hassan from Gwarimpa. Al Hassan.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. What's your comment or your question? Very quickly.
Yeah. All the budget had so much nice. But the question I want to ask is this. The problem
Hassan, your connection is not clear. Can you call back so that we can actually hear you? Okay, while we wait for another caller, Doctor, I like that you said, of course, that the budget office, has its work cut out for it in terms of budget implementation, and when you go to their website, you can get more information. But if we even take a look at some of those figures for 2023, you will agree with me that we didn't even hit most of them. For example, inflation, according to President Buhari in 2023, was forecast to be at around 17.16%, if I'm not mistaken. Oil production, 1.69 million. I can go on and on, but we did not even achieve, GDP growth of 3.75%. We ended 2023 with a GDP growth of about 3.1% or thereabout. So if you take a look at those parameters, we did not hit those targets. And I also see that actually what even Sunday from Lagos tried to ask, how did we even perform? Because budget is a projection. Government is saying this is also what we will do. If you didn't pass, perhaps you repeat the class, as it were. But I don't know if for budget is allowed, or if you get carryover, you rewrite the paper. So would you like to comment on that before we get a caller again, very quickly?
Yes. I like you don't pass, you will repeat the class. But you know, politicians may like to repeat the class if you need more money.
But I don't know if in economics, if it's like that.
No, you also want to move forward. And I
Yeah.
think I made one point the other time that what we normally say is that, and I think we need to, as a country, do a lot more. And we overstate our revenue. We do our expenditure, what we want to do, but overstate our revenue so that our deficit can look manageable. But at the end of the year, we don't do some of the things that we promised to do. We don't get the revenue. We'll say we get revenue of 8 trillion or 10 trillion. We get half of that. We say we will spend so much on current expenditure. We actually make sure that we spend all on current expenditure, because that's actually very difficult. You have to pay salary and overhead for the office to run. The only one that often suffer is capital expenditure. And these are the ones that impact people. Yeah, recurrent also impacts people, because if you have a hospital and there are no syringes and there are no things like nurses or doctors' salaries are not paid, which are in recurrent expenditure, there is no point in building the hospital, which is a capital expenditure in the first instance. So recurrent and capital have to go together simultaneously. But when we do a lot in recurrent and don't do much in capital, that people want to see food, they want to see power, they want to see water, they want to feel the impact of government. If we don't do them at the end of the year, and we spend all the money on recurrent and servicing our debts, people will claim that they don't see the impact of government, apart from the fact that government pays salary and government staff buys things that people are selling in the community. So we need to do more in terms of how we implement our budget, especially capital projects. We need to do much more in capital projects. And one point is this: whether the government, and we may have to do a lot of thinking about it. Nigeria has been doing a lot in that area, but we have not been able to solve the problem sustainably. Maybe government does not have all the resources to provide the capital requirements, capital investment and infrastructure for the country. Maybe we need to evolve a more sustainable manner. But we should also not forget that people can afford. This thing is a cycle. If you say, oh, give it to the private sector and people cannot buy it, then you have not actually solved their problem. So we need to start thinking as a country. But we must also be seen as government to be doing right. I think that is very important.
Exactly, like the first caller mentioned.
Consumption.
Exactly.
Ostentatious consumption. People hearing that somebody just bought something and they cannot buy it, they feel it's their money.
Okay, Dr. Friday is calling from Abuja. Hello, Friday. Be very quick with your comments.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. How are you? Go ahead quickly. You have 30 seconds.
Okay, please, I want to contribute that, please, our budgeting, we Nigerians.
Mr. Friday, please, can you reduce the volume of your TV set? I'm hearing myself in your house or wherever you're watching.
Please, our budget should be
yes,
people oriented in the sense that most of our youth okay. Please, our budget should be people oriented in the sense that most of our youth at the end of the year, they don't see what our government are budgeting for, and we are jobless, and it's not affecting no factory, no job, so many things are going on in the country.
Okay.
Is affecting the youth, because the leaders of tomorrow is the youth. But
okay.
The youth, we are not seeing we are not.
Friday, I think I've gotten your message that the budget should be people-oriented. It should be a budget that creates jobs, and it should get young people out of the streets. I think that's what you're trying to make there. Okay, Doctor, you want to comment? Then while you comment, just hold on. I also got a message from the former chairman of the NESG. He's watching, and he said he wants to to call, but the connection is busy, so he sent me a message. The former chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group is watching, Mr. Lao Yejayola, and he's asking, what's the relationship between government spending and private sectors in African countries used Doctor, I hope you are taking note. And how can we make Nigerians more productive? In fact, Mr. Jayola almost got this question out of my mouth because I wanted to ask you that. How can we make Nigerians more productive, and what's the relationship between government spending and private sectors in African countries use? Very important question. Thank you, Mr. Jayola, and thank you for watching.
The bar for me. Okay, so okay, so I think the last speaker, what he said, okay, I can't add to it. Government needs to be responsive to the youth and every categories of the citizens. It's very important. When people are not employed, they can go into crime. They have to consume. That employed are the ones that are giving them money out of their own little money. So dependency ratio will rise, then poverty will rise. So government needs to do something. Is it always government? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe we need to start have a kind of a rethink. What should government do? What should the private sector do? And I think that is the perspective that Mr. Jayola is trying to look at. Government needs to incentivize the private sector. But let me start from government. If you have a weak government, you probably will also have a weak private sector. In many countries around the world, especially some liberal democracy, advanced countries, people will say private sector is doing this, private sector is doing that. But they should also not forget that the public sector at a certain time in their lives of history have also done some things which the private sector, I mean, Elon Musk is going to space now. But before now, it's just NASA and government has done a lot in the US before the private sector started moving into those space. When the public sector is weak, the regulatory environment is weak, the incentive structure is weak, it is captured, it is also very difficult to incentivize private individuals to contribute to the production of goods and services. And I think as a country, we need to not downplay one and emphasize the other. We need to find a way that both the private sector and the public sector can grow simultaneously in our country.
Okay, the second question from Mr. Jayola is, how can we make Nigerians more productive? Answer very quickly because we've got less than a minute to go.
Okay, so to make Nigeria productive, the incentive structure has to be right. First, if there is opportunity to make quick money, others who can do sincere jobs can also sit back and watch. Whatever it is that government can do to make sure that you work and you make the money and your money is not taken away from you in an unlawful manner and someone doesn't come and take away the money that belongs to society. That is one. Secondly, in the allocation of government budget, because we're also speaking of budget, so I want to tie that to the budget that we're discussing. The allocation of budget, it should be such that the way government allocates resources is not only to execute project directly, but to incentivize, serve as guarantee, and also ensure that private sector can come in and produce more. Without being productive as a country, we probably will still be having problems with inflation, with exchange rate, and with poverty. And government alone.
Doctor, if you can hear me, I think I need to thank you at this point. Doctor, can I see you? Thank you very much for being on today's edition of the program. You see, it's actually been a busy one, and it's as if we shouldn't leave, but thank you. We could do this again, because with what we just seen today, Nigerians are really interested in knowing what's happening. So thank you very much. Dr. Afolabi Olowookere is the Chief Economist at Analyst Data Services and Resources. And thank you also to our colleagues